Welcome to the quarterly meeting of the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. I know that we have a lot of our fellow officers who are busy at the coast today. I thank you that you're here today. I'm surprised there are this many here, but thank you for being here. If you would now stand as the Round Rock Color Guard presents the colors. Our pledges by Commissioner Oakley and our invocation Commissioner Hester.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day and for each blessing that we have. Lord, we ask that you continue to be with our first responders that are in Houston and those that are in the Rockport area and all those affected by the hurricane. Lord, we ask that you bring them comfort and peace and keep our brothers and sisters safe. We pray for Florida and our first responders that are there. We ask that you guide them and keep them safe as well. Lord, we thank you for all the blessings. Be with us today as we make decisions that they be pleasing to you. Forgive us where we fail you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. Very nice job today by the Round Rock Police Department Honor Guard. Members are Jerry Halford, Joseph Claypool, Dominique Pagan, and Ray Rodriguez. Let's give them a hand. Ms. Wilson, will you call roll?
Commissioner Joel Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Pat Shekel-Hollingsworth.
Here.
Commissioner Jason Hester.
Here.
Commissioner Patricia Burris. Commissioner Ron Hood.
Here.
Commissioner Kim Lameau.
Here.
Commissioner James Oakley.
Here.
Commissioner Sharon Breckenridge Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Whitaker. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wilson. I might mention that Tim Whitaker is, I think his water's below his ankles in his house now, and he is really truly busy in the Houston area. We'll now move to agenda item number 2, which is the reading of the peace officer jailer death since June 8th of 2017 meeting. Ms. Grigsby.
Good morning, Commissioners. Since the June meeting, there have been unfortunately 6 deaths in the law enforcement community in Texas. Corrections Officer Shanna Tedder, age 41, Texas Department of Criminal Justice. End of watch, Friday, June 9th, 2017. Corrections Officer Shanna Tedder died after suffering a suspected heart attack following a use of force incident with an inmate at the Christina Melton Crane Unit in Gatesville, Texas. She began to experience shortness of breath following the incident and collapsed after walking to a different area of the facility to rest. Other officers immediately began CPR as medics responded to the facility. However, they were unable to revive her. Officer Tedder had served with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 12 years. Police Officer Miguel Moreno, 32 years old, San Antonio Police Department, end of watch, Friday, June 30th, 2017. Police Officer Miguel Moreno was shot and killed as he and his partner attempted to contact two subjects near the intersection of Evergreen and Howard Streets. The officers observed the men near a car that appeared to have been broken into. As they stopped to speak to the subjects, one of the men immediately opened fire with a revolver, striking Officer Moreno in the head and his partner in the torso. Despite his wounds, Officer Moreno's partner was able to pull him out of the line of fire and then returned fire, wounding the suspect. The man then committed suicide. The second subject was taken into custody. Officer Moreno was transported to a local hospital where he succumbed to his wound the following morning. Officer Moreno had served with the San Antonio Police Department for 9 years. Deputy Sheriff Jason Fan, 28 years old, Yoakum County Sheriff's Office, end of watch, Saturday, August 5th, 2017. Deputy Sheriff Jason Fan was killed in a vehicle crash at approximately 6 o'clock p.m. while responding to an accident on Highway 214, 2 miles south of Plains. His patrol car left the roadway and overturned, causing him to sustain fatal injuries. Deputy Fan served with both the Seagraves Police Department and Yoakum County Sheriff's Office. Detective Elise Ibarra, 33 years old, Abilene Police Department, end of watch, Sunday, August 6th, 2017. Detective Elise Ibarra was killed in a vehicle crash on I-20 outside of Abilene when her department vehicle was struck by another car at approximately 6:15 p.m. She and 2 other detectives were en route to Dallas to attend the Crimes Against Children conference. They encountered slow traffic due to a previous wreck on the interstate. A few moments later, a pickup truck struck the rear of their unmarked car, causing Detective Ibarra to suffer fatal injuries. The other 2 detectives were transported to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Detective Ibarra had served with the Abilene Police Department for 3 years and was assigned to the Special Victims Unit. She had previously served with the Sedalia, Missouri Police Department. She was survived by her husband and her daughter that was just 10 months old at the time of her death. Corporal Monty Platt, 47 years old, West Texas A&M University Police Department, end of watch, Tuesday, August 8th, 2017. Corporal Monty Platt died of complications of an animal bite sustained on July 24th, 2017, as he attempted to capture an injured feral cat on campus in the area of 301 26th Street. The cat bit him through his work gloves and punctured his skin. He received medical treatment and was given medication, which caused him to suffer a severe allergic reaction. He was transferred to the ICU at University Medical Center in Lubbock, where he was placed on a ventilator. His condition rapidly deteriorated, and he passed away on August 8th, 2017. Corporal Platt had served with West Texas A&M University Police Department for 21 years and had served in law enforcement for 24 years. He is survived by his wife, son, and mother. Sergeant Steve Pettis, 60 years old, end of watch, Sunday, August 27th, 2017. Sergeant Steve Pettis drowned after his patrol car was caught in the floodwaters in the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey. He was attempting to report to duty station in the downtown area, but was unable to reach it due to all of the impassable roads. He then attempted to reach the Kingwood station, but his patrol car was washed away in high water in the area of Hardy Tollway and Beltway 8. His body was recovered by members of the Houston Police Department dive team and citizens on August 29th, 2017. Sergeant Pettis had served with the Houston Police Department for 34 years and was only days shy of his 61st birthday. He is survived by his wife and 2 adult children.
Thank you. We'll observe a moment of silence to remember these officers and their families. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 3, which is election of assistant presiding officer and secretary to comply with Chapter 1701-055B of the Texas Occupations Code. And so I'll open the floor for nominations for assistant presiding officer.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I nominate Pat Shecker-Hollingsworth as Assistant Presiding Officer.
Are there other nominations? Congratulations. I'll open the floor for nominations for secretary.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Hester to fulfill the role of secretary.
Other nominations? Congratulations.
It was a tough vote.
Move to agenda item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of the June 18th, 2017 quarterly meeting here in Austin.
Move approval.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any additions or corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move now to agenda item number 5, which is receive reports. I'm going to start off today by announcing the dates of next year's of the 2018 quarterly meeting. Our first meeting, our March, will be March 1st. Our June meeting will be June 14th. Our September meeting will be September 6th. And our December meeting will be December 6th. All meetings will be here at the J.J. Pickle Center. Excuse me. We'll move next to the Executive Director's report. Mr. Vickers.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Glad to be here this morning. A beautiful day outside. In your notebook, you have the normal budget and criminal misconduct quarterly report documents. We have had no applications approved for training provider applications the last meeting. We do have a couple that are pending that we're working on, and one training contract has been canceled. That we came in and canceled their contract. I want to talk briefly about the Training Coordinators Conference, and kind of that's coming up pretty quickly. One of my favorite times of the year. As of the 22nd of August, the exhibit ballroom is full, so we have all our vendors full, and we have 531 trainers sign up to attend the conference. We anticipate our normal 700 to 750. We have an outstanding lineup of speakers. We are cognizant of the idea that we may lose some people because of the issues along the Gulf Coast. Corpus, luckily, did not sustain the direct hit they thought that they might, and the place where that involved us in the conference are not damaged and won't be a problem. So we'll be moving forward. We do have some outstanding speakers that will be at this conference. Sam Silverstein is an international business consultant, speaker, and author. He is the founder of the Accountability Movement. Jim Dotson, sponsored by the Public Agency Training Council, is a fourth-generation Texas peace officer with 27 years of service with the Odessa, Texas PD. We hear amazing things about him. Harry Dolan is a 32-year police veteran, now the CEO of Dolan Consulting Group. Clay Abbott and Michael Ferguson. Clay's with the Texas District and County Attorney Association, and Michael Ferguson runs the criminal justice program at Kilgore College. Will be presenting the legal update course for us. And then Michael Neela, and former assistant chief from Houston, Dan Perales, will be doing a presentation on Blue Courage. And as always, we'll do our TCOL Speaks and have time to get up in front of everybody and let them ask questions and try to open up communications there. We had a couple of issues that were brought up in previous meetings that you had requested a report on. I'm going to give you some information there. The first is on training in underserved areas. Specifically, we were looking at the West Texas area. We had been looking at trying to help with an academy in West Texas, and Midland College had said they would like to step up and take that on, and so they have done so. They're covering a West Texas academy and doing a good job of it. Reports back to us indicated they're very successful and things are going well. So we're monitoring that, but we're letting them handle their business out there right now, and if they need help, we're ready to step in and help where we can. Speaking of that, training is going to be a very discussed topic over the next several months as we move into strategic planning. As you know, as soon as we hit toward here the end of the year and the first part of next year is when we historically do our strategic planning for the next biennium. And you're a very valuable part of that. Matter of fact, you're the ones that will be developing the core product on that. You'll be hearing us talk quite a bit. In our discussions at the commission, we feel strongly that we need to become more involved in the training side of our mission. We've worked diligently over the last several years to improve and embrace our regulatory side and make sure that we're doing what we need to do there. We feel it's time to increase our efforts in the training arena and in the training area. It's premature to give too much discussion on this, as the exact manner in which we undertake these efforts is still kind of up for discussion. But you'll be hearing much more about it as we move into strategic planning, and I think you will see that we're very excited and prepared to move forward to embrace our role in the training aspect of Texas law enforcement and the role we're supposed to play there. We also were asked to report back on the academic alternative program information that we had worked through in a previous meeting. As you know, we at one point had almost come to the point of doing away with academic alternatives, but Austin Community College offered an alternative to that and said they would be glad to help us work through some issues there. ACC has been facilitating a crosswalk system to ensure that academic alternative programs are providing consistent and effective training that actually do fulfill the normal police academy requirements. Cullen, that works for us, has been monitoring this process. He reported to me that this crosswalk is complete. Matter of fact, I have a copy of it right here. It looks very good, and that it is in place within the ACC academic alternative program. When we do a final approval, which I think will be very quickly done, we will hand that out to the other active academic alternative program in the state. Now that we have this good model in place, we can work with them to ensure that this same process is used there and that we can feel comfortable with our academic alternative programs, that they're actually fulfilling the role, that process is fulfilling the role it's supposed to do. I also wanted to let you know, we've been very busy. I've kind of become overseeing one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the state suddenly. The governor's office, you received an email from me, but just as a quick review, the governor's office approached us and said they needed assistance trying to find a way when federal officers, we had a lot of federal officers flooding into the state to help with the relief efforts along the coast. And they had to find a way to get them to have the authority and immunities of a Texas peace officer. We came up with a process to help them do that. They were very pleased with it. I told them I would send John Hellenberg down to help coordinate that because those people have to be vetted and inventoried. And he has done a great job in coordinating our efforts along the coast in providing this authority and immunities to federal officers. To say that program has been successful would be a bit of an understatement. The last report I received from John was about the midweek of this week, and he reported that totally we have now granted Texas peace officer status to just under 1,700 agents, and they've done an amazing job. That operation continues because some of those people are now being deployed toward Florida, and some relief people are coming in behind them. But I believe that John may be about to wrap that up by the end of this week and get on back home. But this has been a successful program. I think we've played a valuable part in helping with our relief efforts through the work we were able to do there. And I wanted you to know that I'm very proud of my people and the work that's been done there. That's all I have for specific report information, unless you have questions for me. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Director. Are there questions?
I just had one question. How many are left now in the academic alternative besides ACC?
I believe we actually have 3 on the books, but only 2 are actually doing
Are
anything.
active.
Yes, ma'am. And even the second one is kind of backed off until they figured out where this process was going, so they haven't been putting anybody into their process. So one that's still very active, one that is looking to be active, and the third one, I don't know if they're going to continue or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Hester.
Director, and it may be something that one of the other 2 directors are going to cover. We're going to discuss the pending classes that are required. Okay, very good. I was just making, I didn't know who was going to cover it, so.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Director. We'll move, I know that it says Operations Director Report John Hellenberg, but we are not going to Skype him in from Houston. And we will move to the Government Relations Director Report, Director Grigsby.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, Commissioner Hester, along those lines, I had mentioned in the June meeting that there were 4 bills that passed during the regular legislative session that require new training that the Commission was charged with developing. I'm happy to report that all of those are underway and they're on track to be completed well within the deadlines required by their respective legislation. As it happens, the process to incorporate some of those for the basic peace officer course and basic jailer course has been seamless since there were committees already in place and conducting a full review of those courses. And so they involve committees of not only legislative subject matter, law enforcement subject matter experts, but from those in the particular industries that they come from as well. This process has been ongoing for several months and is scheduled to be completed by this time next year for actual rollout for the academies. This is a complete course review with concentration on current best practices and extensive inclusion of practical exercises to aid in the internalization process so that officers can not only receive the training but take it and use it. Additions to the licensing courses from new legislation have been primarily in the area of communication skills and mental health. These areas were already being reviewed by each committee, as I mentioned, and are joining seamlessly with the legislative mandates. Most prominently, the Sandra Bland Act expanded the crisis intervention training and added de-escalation techniques for interactions with the public, as well as mental health training for jailers. Along with our law enforcement subject matter experts, again, we are fortunate to have experts from several organizations lending their talents. The National Institute of Corrections, Bureau of Justice Assistance, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, Texas Veterans Commission, and the Texas Correctional Office on Offenders with Medical or Mental Impairments, TCOMI, to name a few. Other committees that are currently working to produce quality courses include interaction training for law enforcement and civilians for SB 30, eyewitness identification under House Bill 34, court security under Senate Bill 42, and then you may have also seen that the state and federal law update from the most recent legislative session, that committee has completed their work and the curriculum is available on the TCOL website. We did want to give a little bit of an additional note and thanks to the many departments and organizations that continue to support their staff, enabling them to volunteer their time, talent, and expertise to the TCOL committees to create the quality courses that we offer. This quality absolutely would not be possible without their efforts, so we want to thank them very much. In non-training news, the first meeting of the Peace Officer Memorial Ceremony Committee that we are part of happened the week before last. And we will continue to meet at least monthly, if not more so, as we approach the May Peace Officer Memorial Ceremony. So we've been working with our partners on that. There are 10 total entities that were involved in that committee, and we've been able to get all of them together and start working on that process. The rule that you will see today relates to House Bill 1545, and all of the bills that charged us with new responsibilities, we are in the process of implementing those, and I think we've done a good job of that so far. I did want to take a moment, and we have a new legislative budget board analyst. John Wheelmaker has left the LBB, and Fisher Reynolds, I saw here, if he will stand. Fisher has joined us today, and we look forward to working with him.
Good, thank you.
And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions of Ms. Grigsby?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Hester?
So on the, I know the CIT went up to 40 hours, right?
Correct.
What is the, has the committee been given any direction or any idea on the other classes, mandate classes, and the length that those are going to be? I think that's probably the big question for most people.
Sure, Chief
Yeah,
Vickers?
I'd like to address that. It's a process to try to ensure that you deliver a good product that delivers the amount of information needed to truly cover the subject, while at the same time being cognizant of restrictions of time and money for especially small agencies in rural areas. Where we can at all, my instructions to these committees have been absent some sort of mandated length of these courses, to please try to make the courses 8 hours or less, and get as top quality a product as we can in that time. Because once you get beyond 8 hours, then people are having to send their officers overnight for the training, which it just compounds the budget restrictions that are there. And so we're trying diligently to maintain an 8 hour or less level of training on those, to be cognizant of those areas that have no training budget, and it's very difficult to break people loose for long periods of time for training. It almost makes it impossible for them. So we're trying to balance those two, but so far the kind of the marching orders, the instructions we've requested from them is, let's try to keep these at 8 or less hours, and that's been the general rule.
Very good, thank you, sir. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? We'll move next to the Audit Committee report. Commissioner Hollingsworth has chaired that committee and has a report for us today.
Okay, thank you. The Audit Committee met yesterday at 1 o'clock at the TCOL office, and the persons present, of course, myself, Commissioner Ron Hood, Commissioner Kim Lameau. Commissioner Burris was on the committee as well, but she was unable to attend. We had Brian Roth and Kim Vickers and Mike Antu from the commission. Our fiscal year ended on August the 31st, and we ended the year in the black, which is unusual for a lot of agencies. Fortunately, we did, aside from good money management, the other reason was that we had a hiring freeze, and so that assisted us in coming out in the black. Current budget year began September 1st. The commission was asked to cut the budget by 4%. The final cut was actually 2.8% off the base because of some border security. We will be watching, of course, the travel being monitored, but it won't affect our field services. They will still be providing the services to the state as is necessary. SORM audit, all the issues were addressed. We will have an upcoming audit in December from the Comptroller's office, and then a SORM, another audit in January. We talked about safety and security, and of course we've already hardened some of the areas in the commission offices, but due to the CJIS audit, we had to change some additional things. There's some additional procedures and policies that had to be put in place because of the CJIS audit, and so those security measures have been put in place. And as far as our computer security, we've had some attempted breaches which were successfully thwarted by our computer geniuses, as I would see them. Our data storage and our phone system have been, we've added to those to have additional system redundancies to avoid the loss of any kind of data, either from a power loss or any other cause. So we're in good shape there as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Commissioner Hollingsworth? Okay, I'd like a motion and a second to accept the Executive Director's report, our Government Relations Director report, and Audit Committee report.
So moved.
That was a so moved, so by two, so
Second.
one of them's a second.
Absolutely.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Agenda item number 6 is receive items of interest and take action if necessary. Today, Director Vickers is going to discuss out-of-state or federal equivalency for county jailer training and telecommunicator training.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, with your permission, when we finish this quick discussion on this item of interest, I had one more thing I would like to discuss real quickly that I'm going to like to inject into here. As you know, we have a process, a waiver process for out-of-state or federal equivalency for peace officers allows them that they've had basic peace officer training in another place that it's easy to see that they're equivalent, we can afford them to do so. We waive their requirement to go back through a whole nother academy, and we help expedite their ability to get a Texas license. We've had interest that's come in multiple times now on doing the same thing for jailers and for telecommunicators, because we have not had those processes in place. Historically, we've not done it, but we feel like it's a feasible thing to do. Jailer's course generally is about 96 hours, although that number's probably going to increase. Telecommunicator course, which they also have to have crisis communication with it, so it makes their total about 64 hours for their training. We feel like that if we decide to move forward with this, if you would like us to move forward with the idea of extending these waiver processes, the feasibility of these waiver processes to jailers and telecommunicators, it might be easier to do for telecommunicators as their training across the country, we believe, is much more consistent. And it may be a little more difficult task to pin down some of the jailer courses in other states, but we're very willing to undertake that process if you decide that's a direction you would like to see us go. We felt like that was something we wanted to bring to you as an item of interest to see if the interest is there for us to pursue those processes.
Thoughts?
I'd like to see us pursue at least the telecommunicator aspect of it, because repeatedly we have been told how difficult it is for agencies to get telecommunicators. And I think if we facilitated that by being able to do the same process, I think that would be beneficial to the agencies we're serving. Personally, I think that's and I'm sure the same thing is true with jailers. There's a lack of jailers, but like you said, the training's going to be probably considerably different from state to state as opposed to telecommunicators.
As they probably, I'm thinking I'm the only sheriff up here
Yes,
that
sir.
has a jail. I'd sure like to see you at least see if it's feasible.
I think we can make it work. It's going to take a little work, but I see no reason why we can't make this work and extend those same possibilities to jailers and telecommunicators from other states. I think
makes sense to me.
we can do it.
If you look at the number of the population moving from out of state to Texas, just in general, right, this makes sense to actually look at that and see where we can make it work. So I would agree.
Okay, it sounds like there's no dissent.
Yes, sir, it
All right.
does.
Next thing.
The other thing I wanted to quickly mention, I probably should have done during my report, but I thought this would be a place I could throw it in. In respect for the first responders in the Houston and Gulf Coast area that are so tied up trying to save lives and to deal with issues down there, we hit the end of the training unit and cycle on August 31st. While people have had 2 years, and in some cases 4 years to get the training done, we are very aware of the fact that many times there's a reason and that people sometimes don't quite have that done. And those last couple of weeks of the training unit or cycle are historically very busy times, and yet these people are tied up trying to save lives. So we moved forward on extending the deadline to complete that training for 30 days till September the 30th, out of respect for those officers and giving them a chance to complete the work they're doing down there and still catch up on their training. It presented some problems, because if you look at it, if you just go into TCLEDs and you extend it to September 30th, then training that's done this month, they wouldn't get credit for in the next biennium, which they should be able to get. However, if we go the opposite direction, we don't necessarily in TCLEDs move it forward, but we just recognize that the 30th of September is now the new deadline. Then training done in September can actually count for both units. And when we were trying to weigh which way we look at that, we decided to err on the side of the officers and err on being the easiest to get along with and to work with, be cooperative in that with them. And so the way that we're doing it is, it has been extended to September 30th. We will do that manually with our non-compliance reports, which means, And I'm saying this openly for a reason, because we're not, people might as well understand the way the process works. If training is obtained this month, during the month of September, yes, they will get not really dual credit, they'll just get the one set of hours, but it will go toward both units. And we figured that, hey, if that's the price we pay to try to help out on this one, that's the best way to go. And I wanted you to be aware of that decision and that that's what we were doing, and we did so to help law enforcement and to help our officers and that are tied up down there in the best way that we could. And I wanted to make, in case you had any questions on how that worked, I wanted to bring that up to you so you would hear what we're doing.
Questions?
I have a question. Does this extension apply statewide, or is this just for those agencies affected by the?
It is statewide.
It is statewide.
It would be so difficult to try to pin it down, because people are working on the Gulf Coast from all over the state. And
Right.
so people are affected across statewide, so we figured the easiest way to do it is do a statewide extension, and that's what we've done.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you did that. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 7, which is discuss and take action on request for waiver of TCOL Rule 217.1 minimum standards for enrollment and initial licensure. And this will be for the Electric Police Department. Director Vickers, do you want to give the background?
I will defer to my general counsel on that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. For your consideration, next is a waiver request submitted by Chief Dozier of the Electric Police Department on behalf of Jessica Manry. Excuse me. Chief Dozier is requesting a waiver of the minimum standard requirements under Rule 217.1 related to a permanent bar from licensure for Class A misdemeanor. Specifically in this case, they're requesting a waiver of a Class A misdemeanor criminal mischief from 1997 for your consideration.
Okay, Chief, would you like to come up to the microphone? Ms. Manry, you can come up too. Chief Dozier, happy to have you here today.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Commission and Executive Director Vickers for this opportunity to come and speak with you today. On behalf of the Electric Police Department and Ms. Manry and myself, I request a waiver of this action. This actually took place in 1994. Back in, let me get my dates here. Back in March of this year, 2017, we were in need of a telecommunications operator. Geographically, Electra, Texas is located approximately 25 miles northwest of Wichita Falls, right along the Red River border, just south of Oklahoma. We're a small rural agency, and our budget is crunched. And we were in need of a telecommunication officer, as I said, at a time that the small agency ran upon a human trafficking case. I am a working chief, and I was also involved in that investigation of the human trafficking case, along with the agents from the Texas Department of Public Safety. My administrative assistant was a 15-year veteran telecommunications supervisor out of Wichita Falls, and she interviewed Ms. Manry as one of the 3 applicants, is all we got for the telecommunications. The initial criminal history ran on her indicated a criminal mischief case back from 1994, and but it didn't have a disposition. She was hired off of that, but looking at, and when she came in with her recommendation that we do hire Miss Manry, I tell you, I owned up to that. I did not look further into that. She did it on her application, admit that she was involved in a criminal mischief 24 years ago when she was 17 years of age, and when it went to trial, pre-trial diversion, she turned 18 years of age. And back then, the monetary loss of a Class A misdemeanor is not what it is today. The damage sustained in the rock throwings through the windows when she was a young 17-year-old girl, and the values today would be a Class B misdemeanor, and it was an oversight on my part, and I take full responsibility for that. they offered her a 6-month probation with or 180 days with restitution. My field agent, Lynn Beard, did an audit on my department. Fingerprints after she was hired. Her hire date was around March the 28th of 2017, and she started on the 30th. We submitted her fingerprints, we got it back, and there was more of an extensive report of a Class A misdemeanor. Mr. Beard brought to my attention that the Class A misdemeanor, even though it was deferred and later dismissed, due to her complying upon all requests of the court, still went down as a deferred. I'm a fairly new chief. I started in December 2015, and I didn't know any better. I since know better. Mr. Beard brought to my attention, and I immediately did an F5 separation form with the department. The department incurred a cost of her psychiatric evaluation, her physical, and the training and the overtime hours it took to train her. The short time Ms. Mannery was a telecommunicator operator, prior to us learning this, she was a very good employee. She came with a professional attitude. She was a very good asset to the department for a small agency. She did a very good job, and we was very proud of her. So I went and took it to the city administrator after learning from Mr. Beard that there was this process that was set forth here. He felt and I felt that it was worth the chance on Miss Mannery due to this happening 23 years ago, with no other problems since. Unfortunately, she was left by her husband and left with 3 children to raise. Her previous employment was the Iowa Park School District, which is located between Wichita Falls and Electra, Texas. I got a letter, and y'all have it in your packet there, from the school. She was an exemplary employee. I also got one from my city administrator for y'all to look at, as well as the arresting officer back in 1994, who ironically works for my agency. He has no problem working with her, and without going over the letter, y'all have it there in front of you. She was just being a kid. And at one point, prior to me working for the Electra Police Department and Chief of Police, I worked for the Wichita County Sheriff's Office, where part of my duties was to escort inmates up to County Court at Law Number 1 and County Court at Law Number 2, misdemeanor courts. And I often saw the prosecutors take plea bargains and tell these young 17, 18-year-old suspects, defendants, however you want to call them, that, you know, if you'll take the plea, these are without counsel. If you'll accept this plea bargain, it'll be dismissed. If you're deferred, and it'll be dismissed at a later date. And after speaking with Ms. Mannery, after I brought this to her attention, she was not aware that it was a Class A misdemeanor, and I believe her. From what I had seen, and the county clerk brought to my attention that it was dismissed, and they had to go back in the archives. It had taken place so long ago to even pull the case up. And I just request that on behalf of the Electra Police Department that you find it in the best interest of the Electra Police Department. And I understand that I'm taking full responsibility of her actions if this waiver is granted, and I will take that full responsibility as her as my employee. She has been exemplary employee so far. She has stayed busy since I gave her a non-TCO position. We kept her there as a clerical work and custodial work until we could have this hearing today. We are in a financial crunch, and like I said before, the city administrator and myself found her work and her work ethics, her attitude and professionalism worthwhile of taking the opportunity and the chances to bring it before the commissioners today to grant this waiver. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chief. Questions of the Chief? Does anybody have questions of Ms. Mannery?
Mr. Chair, I'd move in favor of the waiver.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Mannery,
Speakers.
make us proud.
Yes, sir, I certainly will.
Okay.
Commissioners, I want to follow up on that agenda item with some numbers that we've had in relation to Class A waivers. Ever since the rule that was passed to further allow Class A along with the Class B waivers as a bar to licensure. To staff, to executive staff, there have been 16 Class A submissions made. 7 of that 16 have been brought to you, and 7 have been approved by the commissioners. But I just wanted to give everybody an update on what those numbers look like as to what the agency receives versus what comes to you versus what gets approved at the end.
Yeah, that's good numbers to have, and I also appreciate the staff's work on this and doing that. So everybody that I've talked to or that has come up before has been very complimentary of how the process is.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 8, which is discuss and take action on proposed orders of amendment to existing TCO rules. Mr. Beecham.
Commissioners, in response to the latest legislative session, what you have before you today is a proposed amendment based on House Bill 1545. In December, there will be more proposed rules. However, this was the most pressing based on the requirement that a rule be passed in response to HB 1545. I will defer to Director Grigsby to kind of give you the ins and the outs of HB 1545 and how we've expressed that in Rule 21521, or proposed Rule 21521. And as just a reminder of where this is in the process, this is a proposed amendment. Certainly, it's open to any amendment or changes to language that the commissioners may have today. If you so choose to go forward with that language, it will then go to the Texas Register for a period of public comment, both to the regulated community and to the general public, obviously. And then we'll come back in December and we will revisit it and see what, if any, changes need to be made. But with that said, I'll give it to Director Grigsby.
Commissioners, the idea behind House Bill 1545 was to recognize I will admit, I was not very familiar with the high school law enforcement endorsement before this bill came up, and in having reviewed the TEA rules since then, and all of the training that these high school students receive related to law enforcement in the law enforcement cluster, I'm much more comfortable, since having reviewed that they do get quite a bit of training while they're in high school. And so the idea is to recognize some of that training, even realizing that it's been at least 3 years since they've gone through it, recognizing that they may have a little bit of a leg up on their peers that might not have received similar training. And so they will receive, under this proposed rule, 40 additional training hours. They're not going to be exempted from the other requirements that the basic peace officer course that they will have to go through to complete that. This will just assist them in advancing in proficiency once they complete the basic peace officer course. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you've got.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner
I'll defer the Assistant Presiding.
Commissioner Hester.
So is there a time limit on this? So if it's been 8 years since I graduated high school and I took one of these classes, which I have to admit too, I'm not aware of, are we still going to give the credit no matter how far back it goes?
I'd be happy to address that. The issue is, and I understand both sides of this issue real well. Part of when I was at Abilene PD for a while, I was an SRO, and I actually taught one of these classes. And I know the pressure that these programs are under because TEA tells them in these vocational type programs, if you don't offer something to the student, we're not going to spend money on your program. So they've been very diligently and desperately looking for an opportunity to provide some sort of assistance or some sort of result to their students so they can maintain these programs. And I think it's important that we maintain these programs because I'm telling you, a lot of young people that go through these programs gain a belief in the law enforcement system and an interest in becoming law enforcement officers, and it fuels a lot of our future officers. So I think these are great programs. They're in a bind because they're supposed to come up with something for it, and that's where this bill got started, was an SRO in the state that requested their legislator look at this. What we have here is an opportunity to provide that, where he can go back, he or she, whoever's running that program, go back to TEA and say, we are providing additional, some sort of benefit to this student for taking this. By doing it the way it is here, it's simply 40 hours that credit they get toward intermediate or toward their total training. What we weren't comfortable doing, which is one aspect that was looked at, was, okay, whatever you take in high school, you don't have to take in a BPOC. Well, that's not really fair to training coordinators, because then they're expected to allow somebody to test for a test for which they're being held accountable as far as their pass rate on material they did not teach, and they don't even know exactly what was taught. So this, I think, was I know that Director Grigsby and Mr. Beecham worked on the wording on this. I think is an excellent compromise to that allows us to provide something to those students so they can go back to TEA and say they're getting a benefit from it, while not compromising the quality of what they're getting in the BPOC and putting training coordinators in a pretty rough position. I also want to add, yesterday evening, talking to some people, yesterday afternoon in the consortium meeting, talking to some people, some telecommunicators, that I now understand there are some of these programs that are actually offering some of this training for telecommunicator work, which allows people to move forward and be interested in that. It doesn't help them get the license, but I'm very much in favor of extending this same benefit to that level, not just for peace officers of BPOC, but to somebody that's getting telecommunicator training, that they can now get credit on their training record on down the line as well. So that's what we're doing here.
Okay, so I'm going to stop right there and say, we have just asked our school district to provide the same thing for county jailer.
Across the board. I think if they're getting that kind of training and we can give them a benefit from it that doesn't compromise the training they get to do their job, I think everybody wins. I think it's a win-win situation.
So just so I'm clear, and just so we have a good understanding, anybody, I think what I hear you saying is you think it should be open up to any licensing course.
That we do, yes,
That
sir.
we do, that TCO regulates.
Yes,
So
sir.
if anybody took one of these courses in high school, it may not be directly communications related, but if they took this course, it would count toward additional hours, whether it was a peace officer license, a jailer license, or a telecommunicator
Whatever
license.
direction they choose to pursue, because it is criminal justice related. All these courses are, and they do some amazing stuff in these courses.
So,
and yes, sir, I'm sorry.
So if I'm a current licensee, if I'm a current peace officer, and I took, let's say I'm 23 and I took one of these courses, are we going to go back and accept these? If I'm 40 hours from my intermediate and I can get this, are we going to go back and accept it?
The only thing about that is these are only offered in high school, so I don't see the feasibility too much of a.
I got some 21-year-old recruits over there.
I understand. I don't know if they can get back into high school, get into that program, but.
Well, I mean, if they took it.
Yes, sir.
Let's say they took it in high school.
Back in high school. I
Yeah.
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know that the way we have this worded, I don't think that we've addressed the retroactive aspect of
It
it.
doesn't, and that was my question, because the rule doesn't specifically say
My-
about that.
Generally, we don't make this stuff retroactive, that we move from this point forward, but I think that's a point of discussion that we're very open to having.
Well, if we make it from this point forward, then do we say if you only took the high school class after September 1 of 17? I mean, we start getting into the weeds real quick on how it's going to be interpreted.
Exactly.
I think what we do, Commissioner Hester, is we look at HB 1545, particularly the enacted version. Usually there's a savings clause in there, and I think that will probably solve, if there's an absence of one, then we're kind of back in the same dilemma that we just talked about. But if there is one that says this only applies to high school courses or whatever the unit of training is they're talking about on or after September 1st of this year, then there we have our answer. And I don't have the enacted version in front of me. Do you have it?
I do.
It
It does say that it applies only to an application for a license submitted on or after the effective date, which is September 1st.
So that it will not be, that would make it not retroactive.
I think it's a great program. It adds yet another element to the vocational training of our public schools, and with that, I'd move approval of the amendment.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move to agenda item number 9, which is discuss and take action on proceedings for revocation, suspension, and other disciplinary actions. Mr. Winter.
Good morning, Commissioners. The first individuals for your consideration this morning are default suspension orders. Can you all hear me now? There are a number of individuals who failed to respond to the notice of the Executive Director's institution of disciplinary proceedings and consequently forfeited their right to a contested case hearing. We recommend entry of default orders suspending their licenses. Those individuals are Gregory R. Adcock, David Allen, Antonio Amador, Randall Cartwright, 2 offenses for Mr. Cartwright, Jose Fernandez, Jesus Garcia, 2 offenses as well for Mr. Garcia, Alan Jacobson, Miguel A. Tapia, and Cesare Womble. And again, the Executive Director recommends entry of default orders suspending the licenses of those individuals.
Thank you. Commissioner Hollingsworth.
I move that the Commission accept and adopt the recommendations of the Executive Director to enter a default order as authorized under the provisions of the Texas Administrative Code 223.3 and the Occupations Code 1701, Section 1701-501, to suspend the licenses of Gregory Adcock, David Allen, Antonio Amador, 2 cases against Randall Cartwright, Jose Fernandez, 2 cases on Jesus Garcia, Alan Jacobson, Miguel Tapia, and Cesar Womble.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Winter.
Commissioners, the next individuals listed for your consideration are officers who failed to respond to the notice of the Executive Director's disciplinary proceedings and have forfeited the right to a contested case hearing. In each of these cases, the offense gives rise to the sanction of a revocation. Those officers are Alberto Contreras, DeAndre Dartard, Jeremy Everett, Ashley Frazier, Javier Hernandez, Jacob Liscano, Jason M. Norris, and Ernest Rodriguez. And again, the Executive Director recommends entry of the proposed default orders revoking their licenses.
Thank you. Commissioner Hollingsworth.
Move that the Commission accept and adopt the recommendations of the Executive Director to enter a default final order as authorized under the Texas Administrative Code, Section 223.3, as required under the provisions of Chapter 1701, Section 1701-501, to revoke the licenses of Alberto Contreras, DeAndre Dartard, Jeremy Everett, Ashley Frazier, Javier Hernandez, Jacob Liscano, Jason Norris, and Ernest Rodriguez.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Winter.
Commissioners, the next matter for your consideration concerns Justin Jackson. This is a cancellation proceeding. Mr. Jackson received his peace officer license after attending the academy through Hill College. Once the license was issued, the Executive Director received information that precipitated an investigation leading to the conclusion that the licensee did not actually qualify for the license issued and did not complete all the minimum training hours required. Cancellation proceedings were instituted, and Mr. Jackson requested a contested case hearing. We moved for summary disposition based upon the evidence, and the administrative law judge granted our proposal. And the PFD before you now is one that does recommend cancellation of Mr. Jackson's license for failure to complete all of the minimum hours required for the basic peace officer license. And we request approval of the PFD and issuance of an order of cancellation.
Thank you. Commissioner Hollingsworth.
I move to accept the Executive Director and the SOA, I guess is PFD, for cancellation of the license of Justin Jackson.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Winter.
Commissioners, the next items for your consideration are agreed orders of suspension and there are a number of individuals who entered into negotiation with the executive director and have agreed to the terms proposed suspending their licenses. Those include Brandon Ariola, Jason Brown, Robert Knoll, Hector Palacios. And the executive director recommends that the commissioners approve those proposed agreed orders suspending the licenses.
Mr. Hollingsworth.
Do we have to take those individually, council?
We can do them all together because you have the orders in the packet, Commissioners.
Okay, I move that the commission accept and adopt the recommendations of the executive director to enter a final agreed suspension order for Brandon Ariola, Jason Brown, Robert Knoll, and Hector Palacios.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Winter.
Commissioners, the remaining disciplinary matters listed on your agenda are for your information only. No action is required. There are individuals who received 2 dishonorable discharges, 2 dishonorable F5s, and consequently that results in a statutory revocation of their license. There are statutory suspensions based upon felony deferred adjudication. And there are also officers who agreed to surrender their licenses in lieu of criminal prosecution, listed for your information. Finally, there are reprimands for officers who failed to complete their statutorily mandated continuing education requirements.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Winter. We'll move to agenda item number 10, which is receive public comment on any topic without action. I don't have anyone signed up. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission? I don't see anybody jumping up. So rather than sit here and stare at each other, we'll take a recess of 15 minutes, and we will come back in here for executive session and then return to open session before we adjourn. And so in 15 minutes, I'll ask that the commissioners return back in here. Judge, that went pretty fast.
I heard you get out of here. Yeah, that worked.
Hand out cards, huh?
Thanks for moving that.
I'll take one.
You did, didn't you?
Well, I like